Well, now that we've read about all of the 6 generations of products and how and what they were designed based on, let's look at where they are applied. Let's look at the various segments they could fall under. Of course, the product range availability needs to be supplemented with our suggestions as to which segment it applies to. Today we are going to cover a series of segments, the first segment being if you were to design green hospitals. Well, green hospitals, let's look at what are the prime needs of a hospital. Well, in the hospital, it's always mentioned in several research papers that the recuperation time of a patient in a hospital improves significantly if he or she has connection to the outdoor world. And how do you give connection to the outdoor world? But for access to the outside space in a safe environment or a view to the outside world with just a beautiful glazing. For this kind of application, the kind of products that we suggest is a product of in the range of a light transmission of 20 to 30% with the 4th generation kind of glasses. And the reason we say 20 to 30% is if you were to put a glazing of a light transmission which was significantly high, you would suffer with a problem called glare. And a patient who's probably just recuperating and wants to look into the outside world doesn't want to be squinting his eyes and looking outside with great difficulty. Let us look at further applications of glare as we talk about in different segments and how this can be addressed with much more superior glazing solutions. Well, in hospitals, of course, as we are talking about patient care and recuperation, which is the key of every hospital, we need to really address the topic of acoustic comfort. How do we get acoustic comfort? The more optimum sound level inside an hospital or a hospital bed to enjoy a comfortable resting sort of an environment is up to 30 to 40 decibels. And for this, it's important to use the right thickness of glass or glasses with the right kind of value additions. What we suggest here is either a thick monolithic glass of 12 mm or a laminated DGU glass. When I say a laminated DGU glass, it means a double glazing unit with one of the glasses laminated with an acoustic PVB or even a standard PVB. The next issue in the hospital primarily is because of the fact that there is sufficient research talking about hospital acquired infection among patients. Hospital acquired infection happens because of the lack of hygiene. And to ensure extremely high hygiene standards, every hospital needs to have interior materials designed to be able to maintain them in a hygienic environment. The way we would like to suggest that hospitals design their interior spaces is by using a range of glazing products which not just act as your facade materials but also act as interior cladding. Today there is glazing products available for interior cladding in a wide range of colors in the market. When you use these kind of materials, it's simple, easy to clean, does not harbor bacteria and therefore makes it the best choice for a hospital interior space. You could also use what I call the dynamic glazing facade. Well, I will come back to dynamic glazing facade and this is on the subject of glare, but other than that, we should also be using accessories which are appropriate for the glass fixing, for your carpet fixing and all other materials so that they produce very low VOCs. VOCs are volatile organic compounds which when inhaled create significant disturbances to your health. Coming back to the subject of dynamic glazing. Well, dynamic glazing is actually to address this problem of glare. There are certain points of time in the day when you would get a very low angle sun, which means you would have this flood of light hitting your eye and then you would not be able to look at it. What do you do in such a case? In typical situations, people pull down the blinds and then leave it to be. But what is the purpose of blinds? If the whole purpose of having a glazed facade was to look outside, and if you were putting down the blinds, you would barely be looking outside. Further, it spoils the view of the building from outside because the vision of the architect was to build a beautiful facade. but if he or she were to see different blinds at different levels in buildings, it would totally disrupt the view of the building. Well, dynamic glazing facade is today the state of the art solution that's available in terms of glazing solutions that can serve this specific need. Dynamic glazing at the press of a button can change the tint of the glass, therefore cutting out glare, solving your glare problem and maximizing occupant comfort. Going on to summarizing therefore what is the ideal specification for a green hospital. Well, as you can see, it is a light transmission between 20 to 30%, a solar factor between 0.2 to 0.25 and a sufficient acoustic comfort. Well, I have given two acoustic comfort bandwidths saying if it were a traffic ridden area in which your building was, well, you need to at least reduce about 40 decibels of sound, and if it were a non-traffic area, about 35 decibels of sound at the least. And these sort of facades need to have a U value of less than 2 watts per meter square Kelvin. For this particular segment, we suggest the product range of single silver low E glass that falls under the 4th generation of products. Going on to the next segment, which is green educational institutes. Schools and colleges today have to be designed well and effectively to maximize their occupants' comfort, to improve their productivity and their learning capacity. More importantly, schools also occupy a lot of people at one place. Therefore, the energy consumption sort of increases, and it's way more important to improve the energy efficiency of these buildings in their design stage itself. For a classroom, for example, it's important to have a solar factor of about 0.35, for a library between 0.2 to 0.25, for an auditorium less than 0.25, because otherwise you would be spending excessively on your AC requirements in an auditorium to be able to achieve significant comfort. Similarly, in the hostel area, about 0.3. If you see the way it is clustered, in the solar factors are clustered, is depending on the amount of people who would be concentrated in an area at a point in time. In classrooms, you're going to have a fairly dispersed audience. In libraries, again a dispersed audience. In auditoriums, you're going to have a lot of people at one time accumulating. There could be lights, there could be music, there could be a lot of electronic appliances that could generate heat. Hostels, again, you're talking about a very diverse, split out sort of a setting. Therefore, for this sort of solutions, we suggest the 4th and the 5th generation products. Moving on to the subject of daylighting in schools. In schools and colleges or educational institutions across the world, the primary concern is daylighting. Students perform better with natural daylight coming in, students can read better, can write better, and overall improves the enthusiasm and the positivity in the environment. To get a very good daylighting, again we suggest for classroom spaces a light transmission between 30 to 40%. You will notice that this is different from the hospitals where I said 20 to 30%, because in hospitals the sort of situation that people are in is a resting setting, as compared to classrooms where someone is supposed to be in an awake setting. Therefore, we suggest that they have a light transmission of between 30 to 40%. In libraries, again, we suggest 30 to 40% because people need to be reading on their desks and reading in an alert situation and not sort of dozing off. But in the hostels, we suggest another 20 to 30% because again, that's a resting environment. And we all know how important it is to rest if you want to perform better in school. Well, for this kind of facade offerings, we suggest the 3rd generation of products and dynamic facades, for example. If you had classrooms with too much glare and people were not able to look at the board or people were not able to write, if that problem could be solved with dynamic facades, you would have far more better performing students in your educational institutions. Apart from the daylighting factor, we also need to look at the fact that these learning spaces need to be noise free. For this, we again suggest certain specific decibel level reductions for different spaces. Libraries, for example, a decibel level of 35 to 40%, and auditoriums, for example, 45 to 50 decibel, because there is going to be so much acoustic padding, there is going to be a show happening, it cannot possibly have acoustic disturbances from outside the building. For this particular suggestion, we suggest double laminated glasses, which is a DGU with lamination on both sides, or a single a DGU with laminated glass on one side. More than monolithic glasses, it would be important to have acoustic related solutions or acoustic PVBs for this lamination to be able to achieve the kind of performances that we suggest. And therefore, to summarize, for an educational institution, what is the ideal spec? Like I have been talking to you, the spec sort of differs for every space that you are designing in the educational institution. It is different for a classroom, different for a library, for an auditorium and a hostel. Overall, if you see the entire range of high performance glasses that offer both solar control and thermal insulation need to be applied for this range of an segment. You could also look at applying dynamic glazing solutions for the segment as well. Moving on to the next segment of the green hotels. Well, green hotels are places where people rest, people go to rejuvenate themselves. They are also places of luxury where people expect impeccable service. Therefore, what is expected in a hotel? One, sometimes you have beautiful hotels set in these mountains and they offer the best views to the outside world. And to make the best of these best views, you need to have the best of the glazing solutions. For this, we suggest having a beautiful panoramic scenic view that has, with a glazing product that has a very, very high color rendering index. What is a color rendering index, you may ask? Well, color rendering index means it talks about the ability of the glazing medium which is in front of you to be able to replicate the color of the object that you see through the medium in the same color that that object is visible in natural light. For example, if I were to look at a clear glass and an object behind my clear glass was appearing yellow in color, but if I were to put another glass in front of it, I could assume, if the glass was too dark in front of me, that the product outside my glass would look slightly different. Therefore, it is important to have a product which has a very, very high color rendering index and low distortion of colors. For this, we suggest our 4th and 5th generation of products which come with a silver coating, therefore giving high performance, high range of colors. You choose your external color, but your substrate color remains solid and therefore guaranteeing you the best color rendering index. The next setting, of course, in a hotel is the fact that you need noise-free rooms. Several hotels today require a sleep guarantee that they need to offer to their customers, which means glazing solutions need to be prepared to offer a very significant decibel reduction from the outside world. For this solution, again, we suggest a laminated DGU or a double laminated DGU to be able to achieve up to 50 to 55 decibel reduction, especially if the hotels are in proximity to transportation hubs like the airports, for example. Therefore, in summary, if you were to design a green hotel, the kind of specification that we would suggest is sort of split across two areas, one in the guest rooms and one in the common areas. The light transmission in the common areas, we suggest you go for really clear and bright glasses which allow a lot of light to come in, simply because the entry becomes welcoming and it doesn't feel dark and dingy. However, in the guest rooms, we suggest a more subtle and a lower light transmission glass, because in the hotel rooms, they are supposed to be resting spaces. If your guest was not comfortable in that space and was flooded with light and had to permanently pull out the shades, what would be the point of the view, right? And in terms of solar control though, we recommend the same level of solar performance in the guest rooms and in the common areas, because these areas are going to have high footfalls or will be areas in which you are going to have a highly efficient HVAC system working to bring down the temperatures. In terms of sound reduction, you need to have a significant sound reduction, and in terms of internal reflection, again you need to have a very low internal reflection. because people would not want to see a mirror image of themselves on the internal face of the glass during night times. For this, our suggested range of products is the 5th generation of products. We also suggest the dynamic glazing solution, especially in sort of projects where you have this fantastic view and don't want it to be cut down by blinds or window shades or curtains, simply because that view is the USP to the customer. And with dynamic glazing solutions, you will be able to guarantee that view to them and still guarantee comfort because you would be cutting off the glare. The next segment is green offices. Well, in office spaces, like in the picture that you see, you have a lot of light required to be able to keep people enthused and active. However, you also have a lot of computers these days. So if the light was falling on the computer, you would barely be able to see and you would be squinting to look into your computer and be able to do your work, making you much less productive. You know, it's like an antithesis. You try to increase the light to make employees active, but then you increase the glare on their computer screens, they become less active. It's sort of a loop that you're in. It is for these kind of solutions that we suggest the dynamic glazing solution because it completely solves this problem. You could also look for products from the 4th to the 6th generation, which is the much better spectral selectivity, the silver based products that can give you very good thermal comfort and at lower light transmissions can be giving you optimum light in the building for your use. In this slide, what we are going to talk about is the energy efficiency in terms of thermal comfort inside the building in an office space. In office spaces, you would notice that they are perennially air conditioned. And for them to be perennially air conditioned, it sucks out a lot of electricity to be able to run an air conditioning equipment. To be able to do this in a much more energy efficient way, we need to design the entire building envelope that's going to let in the heat in a more efficient way so as to reduce the heat ingress. For this, we suggest glass of a solar factor between 0.2 to 0.25, which is way more effective. Again, we suggest the dynamic glazing solutions that are available and products from the 4th to the 6th generation. To summarize, an ideal specification for a green office is a light transmission between 20 to 30% because you don't want the glare problem, a solar factor between 0.2 to 0.25 and a daylight factor of 2 to 3%. Like I told you, we suggest the dynamic glazing solutions and products from the 4th to the 6th generation, which will be able to solve a lot of thermal efficiency issues and be able to give you best light transmissions. In the last segment that we would cover today is the segment of green residences. Well, homes are places where we live in. Do we care as much about the way we design glazing in our homes as much as we design in our offices? Well, increasingly today there has been an awareness about designing better for homes, designing greener homes, and more importantly designing comfortable homes for occupants like you and me to be able to live well. In this particular picture that you see this really subtle light that's coming into the house, really comfortable environment that it feels like you really feel cozy in that situation. It's for this kind of a home that we recommend a solar factor of less than about 0.3%, therefore sort of minimizing all of the direct solar radiation that's going to come into this building and bringing in just the right amount of light. Here we suggest the 3rd generation of products which can actually give you both solar control and thermal insulation in a single glazing solution. In terms of homes, well, we know privacy is an issue, and if you had more and more glass, you would really be opening up your home to the outside world. And very often we don't want that, and we start putting in the blinds, we put in our curtains and shades, and then what's the point of the glass? Therefore, we suggest that you choose a glass with a significantly higher external reflection. What it does is the glass gets reflective on the outside and therefore becoming a sort of privacy medium for the people living inside your home. Again, the 3rd generation of products with optimum light transmission also can offer you suggestions for a highly externally reflective range of glasses. Therefore, the ideal specification for a green residence, in our opinion, is that the light transmission range between 20 to 30%, because that is sufficient, otherwise you would have a glare problem. In terms of solar factor, less than 0.3, because again you need to be thinking about how you are going to cool your home space. And U value is not a significant issue, because in homes the window to wall ratio is much smaller, therefore letting in so much lesser space for glazing. For the green residences, we suggest that you use a third generation product which has both high performance through thermal insulation and solar control for efficient performance.